Washington State has a wildfire crisis. Over the next few months, Western Washington will brace for significant wildland fires. Last year, fire crews fought more than 1,800 wildfires.
We are now having to fight fires in every single corner of the state.
Across the state, 440,000 acres burned.
And I told my husband, I want to see if we lose our home, and we stood there and watched our house burn down.
Over the next half hour, we'll help you become wildfire aware, from fire prevention, response, and if necessary, evacuation. Welcome to the KOMO News Wildfire Season Special. We all remember the catastrophic fire season from last year. Millions of acres burned, so much destruction. In 2018, according to the U.S. Department of the Interior, there were 58,000 wildfires in the U.S. In 2018 was deadly. To our south in Butte County, California, the Camp Fire killed 88 people, most trapped as they tried to flee burning homes. Also in Northern California, the Carr Fire killed 8 more and burned more than 1,600 homes. In the next 30 minutes, the KOMO forecast team will give you the critical information you need. We begin with KOMO meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell with why fire season in the Northwest is likely the new normal.
Seattleites in masks, air quality that rivaled Beijing's for days on end. Fields, trails, and waterways devoid of people. What happened? Hazardous smoke from wildfires. It's cast a hazy gray shadow over the Emerald City for the past 2 summers. Last August, as the thick smoke blocked out the familiar view of the Space Needle, locals took to social media, worried that this was now the new normal. But maybe we just have a short memory. Historically speaking, the Pacific Northwest used to be a smoky place. UW professor of atmospheric sciences, Cliff Mass, recalls the tale of a famous American writer's first visit to Puget Sound during a hot summer in the late 1800s, when those living in Western Washington were used to dealing with seasonal smoke.
The famous story is in 1895 during August. Mark Twain came up to give a talk, and it was all smoky. And the locals apologized to him, and they said, this is very typical in the summer.
So if the summer smoke was fairly typical when settlers first came to the region, what changed in the decades to follow? According to Dr. Mass, we wiped out wildfires with technology. By the 1940s and 50s, we were able to quickly get water and other retardants on these wildfires with trucks and airplanes, effectively snuffing them out, at least for a while. But by doing so and not allowing fires to burn regularly, did we change the very nature of the forest? Where before the East Side forest used to have trees spread apart, and it used to be park-like, grass-like in between. Suppressing the fires caused the forest to become densely populated, slash and low trees between them. And so the fires now tend to burn catastrophically in a way they didn't burn 100 or 150 years ago.
In other words, many think that by interfering with the natural wildfire cycle for over a half-century, our forests have grown too thick, and thick forests burn hot and destructively. Dr. Mass recommends thinning the forests and bringing back prescribed burns, rather than trying to prevent the fires altogether.
An analog would be overprotective parents. You think you are doing everything you can for your child. You protect them against the world, and they grow up to have emotional problems or spoiled, okay? So overprotection can be a problem. Well, that's certainly true of the forests. We thought we were protecting them by suppressing fire all these years, but what we were doing was destroying them.
From KOMO 4 News in Seattle, I'm meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell.
Entire communities leveled, hundreds without homes still fighting to move on. Now, as fire officials prepare for another wildfire season, the fight over funding in Washington rages on. Sinclair National correspondent Christine Frizzau explains.
This year's fire season follows one of the worst fire officials have ever seen.
It was the most destructive wildfire in California history, which is certainly saying something.
David Bebo is with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which oversaw response and relief to areas like Paradise, California, where the Camp Fire resulted in 85 deaths and the destruction of more than 18,000 buildings. But thousands of miles away from this devastation, a disaster of a different kind. It took Congress 237 days to pass a disaster relief bill, igniting the ire of Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill.
We're not here to talk about a storm. We're not talking about fire. We're talking about a disastrous failure of the government of the United States of America to respond to the needs of its people.
Red flags were raised after a November tweet from President Trump, in which he blamed the, quote, deadly and costly forest fires on gross mismanagement and threatened to pull federal payments. Payments some lawmakers believe should already be secured instead of year after year responding after disaster strikes.
My suggestion would be, as we do the budget process, we start thinking about allocating, appropriating a reserve fund that would give us some wherewithal to do this in a much more timely fashion.
Wildfire costs in recent years reached about $1.5 billion, but in 2017 went up to about $2.5 billion. Now, a new challenge. The cost of fire suppression activities now far outweighs the available funding. In Washington, I'm Christine Frizzau.
As we've seen all too often, wildfires can quickly become explosive, consuming entire communities and neighborhoods. Meteorologist Abby Akoni explains how wildfires can erupt across the state.
Extreme fires can grow the length of a football field every second, just like the Thomas Fire did in California back in 2017. Lightning isn't the primary cause for most of these fires. Instead, between 70 and 80% of wildfires are started by people. A firestorm could be ignited by just a tossed cigarette butt or an unattended campfire. It doesn't take much for an intense wildfire to consume the hillsides of the Cascades. Here in western Washington, there's an elevated possibility for wildfires this summer. It's largely due to the unusually dry weather we've had this winter and spring, creating drought conditions across the west side of the Cascades. Forecasters are concerned that this could lead to an increase in wildfires this summer.
Once a fire is started, it needs fuel and oxygen to grow. Brush, prairie grass, and trees are excellent ammunition for fires. When the air is hot and the relative humidity drops below 15%, the atmosphere is primed for a severe wildfire. Wind plays a major role as well. Powerful gusts can spread the flames at outrageous speeds.
Because heat rises, fires grow at faster rates going uphill. This can create new fires as the sparks and embers are carried by the wind, becoming an uncontrollable force. I'm meteorologist Abby Akoni, KOMO News.
A low snowpack can also play a role in fire danger. Our Washington snowpack peaked at around 70 to 90% of normal by March, but a dry spring brought the totals back down. While the snowpack was on the lower side, 66% in the Central Cascades by the end of winter, it was close to normal near the Oregon state line, and it grew by leaps and bounds closer to California, all to be expected in an El Nino year. As we continue to roll our way through summer, it's important to be fire ready. KOMO's Seth Wayne shows us how to do just that.
We've already seen wildfires break out across our state, so it's not if, but when a fire breaks out, are you prepared?
The Ready, Set, Go program helps you be ready with preparedness understanding, be set with situational awareness when fire threatens, and to go, acting early when a fire starts. Let's start with Ready. Take personal responsibility and prepare long before the threat of a wildland fire so your home is ready in case of a fire. Create defensible space by clearing brush away from home. Use fire-resistant landscaping and harden your home with fire-safe construction measures. Assemble emergency supplies and belongings in a safe place. Plan escape routes and make sure all those that live in your home know the plan of action. Set. Pack your emergency items such as photos of all the rooms in your home along with all of your valuables. Here's a good tip. Scan all your important documents and save them on a flash drive. It's also important to include water, non-perishable food, a first aid kit, a flashlight, batteries, clothes, diapers, and pet supplies. Keep your cell phone fully charged and stay aware of the latest news and information on the fire from KOMO News, KOMO News Radio, our social media channels, and of course, KOMOnews.com. Stay in touch with your local fire department too. And go. When you're told to leave, go ahead and do so. Follow your personal wildland fire action plan. Doing so will allow firefighters to best maneuver resources to combat the fire. We're all in this together, and don't forget, stay with KOMO News. I'm Seth Wayne.
Now is the time to fireproof your home. We'll show you how to do just that next. Plus, surviving the worst wildfire in our state's history. We'll take you back to an area forever changed by flames and the people who lived through it. When you see dramatic video of a wildfire moving toward homes, often you see homeowners trying desperately to save their houses at the last minute. But firefighters say there are things you should do now so that you're never in that situation. Here's KOMO's Theron Zahn with some simple steps that can make your home one of the ones that survives.
A raging wildfire can move faster than you can run, and when it reaches your home, what you've done long before the fire started can determine if it survives or ends up in ashes.
I think most people do have that mindset, though, that, oh, it's on the other side, it's not here.
Allison Merriweather lives on what most people call the wet side of the Cascades in Issaquah. Her home is right next to a forest.
We've also had some neighbors that have accidentally lit trees on fire, and it's shocking how quickly they go up in smoke.
Her family has taken steps in case a wildfire comes racing toward their home.
We added a stone-coated steel roof for that factor and got rid of our cedar shakes. See, we cut a big dug for there and there for that defensible space.
Defensible space. That's something you hear over and over from firefighters whose job it is to keep your home from burning.
And this is certainly a place where we could set up hose lines and defend the house from a fire that came up through the woods.
Captain Jordan Simmons with Eastside Fire and Rescue says you need 30 feet between your home and trees to give firefighters a chance to save your house. He took us to a house about to be torn down to show us what not to do.
Any debris or wood piles or anything like that that are stacked up against the house, that's going to cause issues because that's somewhere that an ember can land in that.
Or a tree growing too close to your home.
It can climb that tree, and obviously that's going to be a great ladder to put that fire right into that house there.
And even some of the best prepared homes have areas vulnerable to fire. Eastside Fire Training Captain Dave Augustine shows us a typical one.
When a fire comes through, these decks are a big hazard. Fire gets up underneath the decks and it's just nonstop, it's all combustible construction underneath there.
It's definitely noticeable in the last few summers how much warmer, how much drier it is.
Merriweather says when she looks at the beautiful trees around her home, she knows the danger they can bring.
We do occasionally have that thought when it's usually the 4th of July and people are illegally blasting off firecrackers up here because it is usually pretty dry at that time.
So the time to think about protecting your home is long before the tinder dry days of summer. Theron Zahn, KOMO News.
Firefighters say one of the most popular roofing materials in western Washington is also one of the worst for protecting your home from a wildfire. The experts we talked with recommend replacing your cedar shake roof with a stone or steel roof. July marks 5 years since Washington's biggest and most destructive wildfire in state history. The Carlton Complex fire started as 4 fires and merged into one, causing nearly $100 million in damages. KOMO's Kara Kostanich takes a look at the impact then and now.
It was absolutely chaotic 5 years ago. This was the fireplace right here, and this was part of the library. And my name and my handprint right here, and my sister Sandy's.
These are the burn scars that still shine from the 2014 fire season that will last a lifetime on the landscape and on the hearts of the people who live here.
You cry, even today I cry, but you cry, and then you know, we're strong.
It's taken Rebecca Meadows years to be able to talk about that dreadful day when the fire's destructive path set its sight. It's on her family's treasured home.
And we stopped about 4 miles out of town, and I told my husband, I want to see if we lose our home, and we stood there and watched across the river and up on the mountain. We watched our house burn down.
It's a tragic story that's been told too many times about the summer of 2014. The fast-moving fire destroyed more than 350 homes across Twist, Pateros, and Brewster, and burned 250,000 acres.
The DNR had showed up and told us we had to leave, and they drove off, left us. And I figured I could save the place.
So in his late 70s, Bob Tonseth saved his own home from the raging inferno.
But nobody had any idea how nasty that was going to be.
I've seen a lot of fire.
Not even this woman, a 30-year firefighter who was one of 2 of Washington's first female smoke jumpers.
And it was really a shock to me at that time. We're never going to be shocked again.
Pateros Mayor Carlene Anders has led the long-term recovery effort since 2014, and the group has made their mark. The team has built 36 new homes for people who lost them. They've led Fire Strong workshops and held Green Again campaigns for yard cleanups, and even started a Sign to Save program so homeowners can quickly be located by first responders. But caseworker Jessica Round says there's still an emotional toll.
We have a huge population that is still emotionally scarred, seeing counselors, working with healthcare professionals, and we're already upwards around the 6% level of our survivors have already passed away since 2015.
Anders says the deaths have been directly linked to the impacts of the wildfire.
And even though people always say we didn't lose anyone in the fire, we lost people from this fire.
The Carlton complex took so much from so many, but it's also forced people to change the way they live, to learn about new ways to protect loved ones in a world where wildfires are expected to only get worse.
So it's here to stay. It's going to affect us more and more in the future.
In Pateros, I'm Kara Kostanich, KOMO News.
Coming up, how the biggest tanker in the world is joining the firefight. We take you inside the super tanker. Three states are calling on the biggest air tanker in the world to battle destructive and costly wildfires. This supertanker here is stripped of passenger seats to carry more water or flame retardant than any other air tanker in the world. Lachey Wesley went to see the plane in action and shows us just what makes this tanker super in a firefight.
The holy fire raged through Southern California in August.
Backyard's on fire!
Firefighters battled the wildfire from the ground, and an air arsenal attacked from above. One aircraft may have made a critical difference, the supertanker.
We're the world's largest super soaker.
Global Supertanker Services owns this singular jet airliner that has fought wildfires all across the West and internationally. And it's massive. 747 converted for one task, battling big blazes. Inside, 600 seats stripped away, ready to release over 19,000 gallons. That's about 240 full bathtubs, all at once. We caught up with a crew in the Arizona desert near Tucson. The team is here fine-tuning the aircraft for this upcoming fire season. We joined them as they conducted a series of test flights.
Ready, drop.
Where they dropped thousands of gallons of water onto the dry desert landscape. It can mimic a gentle rain onto a raging wildfire.
Or we can make it come down like a hurricane deluge.
The company is managing a deluge of requests for help. California, Colorado, and Oregon have a contract with Global Supertanker to use the plane when needed. Pilots say the plane can paint an entire ridge with fire retardant. Dan Reese, the company's president, tells me the plane has its limitations when wildfires take off.
The smaller air tankers can get into tighter places than we can get.
But in the right conditions, the supertanker can do the work of several smaller air tankers.
It might take them all day, depending on how many air tankers they have, where if they bring this in, maybe it's done in one drop.
The mammoth tanker has a specific job too.
Take the intensity out of that fire front, and then that gives us the opportunity to follow through with ground troops, crews, engines, dozes.
The supertanker is fast. It can travel 600 miles per hour, built to get to raging fires worldwide.
They call it the Queen of the Skies for a reason.
I asked Marcos Valdez how quickly he could get to a wildfire in California.
We could be in there in about an hour-and-a-half flight time. We could launch from this base here in Arizona probably within an hour, and we would drop a load on that fire today.
The crew is on standby until they're called, but the Queen of the Skies is ready.
In Marana, Arizona, Lachey Wesley.
With wildfire season on the way, maybe it's already started where you live, the flames aren't the only thing that can hurt you. Wildfire smoke seems to get everywhere. Joe English reports on what's being done to cut down on the danger.
Wildfires, they turn the blue sky brown, the yellow sun shades of red.
But what's happening is the fires are getting larger over the last 5-10 years that we've seen. The pattern's getting bigger.
Smoke in the air is measured by particulate matter, a fraction of the size of human hair, and the air quality index tells you when there's too much of it. An AQI of more than 150, that's not healthy for anybody. And we're seeing more unhealthy days in regions hit by wildfires.
Wildfires have really changed the ball game in terms of how bad the air can be in our very neighborhood. So people get wheezy, they cough more, they bring up more phlegm, and they feel like their symptoms are out of control, and that may lead to emergency room visits and hospitalizations.
But before you go, just the quick signs that people need to look for.
Even the air quality experts in this live TV interview in August of 2018 had to stop and catch their breath.
What we're seeing right now is mostly smoke.
Well, that was during one of the worst stretches of smoke-filled air in Portland when the fires were burning hundreds of miles away. Low winds brought smoke from Canada, upper winds brought smoke from the south, and where the fires burned, the air was even worse. For more than a month last summer, the Rogue Valley in southern Oregon had just one healthy air day.
You can't do anything to prevent it, but if you can predict it and get warnings to people in time, that maybe helps a little bit.
At CIRA, the Cooperative Institute for Research in the Atmosphere in Fort Collins, Colorado, new high-tech tools watch for fires and where the smoke is headed. Tools that may have caught the devastating 2012 High Park fire sooner.
Fire temperature products that we can see these fires from space now might have been able to detect that fire when it was still in its smoldering phase, meaning they could have got crews in there to, get water on that fire, get a fire line set up.
CIRA's Matt Rogers says some disasters, like California's Camp Fire, with so much fuel and so much wind, just can't be held back. So health and safety officials and forecasters say the best things we can do is be ready for more fires.
I have changed my practice patterns to talk about proper masks that they should get, that they can get more easily right now than when the wildfire season starts.
And don't start fires in the first place.
Fire prevention equals smoke prevention. I don't think people always equate those two.
In 2018, 75% of the wildfires across the U.S. were started by people. Joe English reporting.
Another challenge for areas closer to the ocean and mountain ranges, clouds. Smoke forecasters say the cloud cover picked up by satellite is usually above the wildfire smoke and can get in the way of seeing where that smoke is blowing. All summer long, you can count on the meteorologists from the KOMO forecast team to keep you prepared. If conditions are dangerous or if air quality is harmful, KOMO News will call a weather warn day. Also, we've created a special wildfire section on KOMOnews.com with information and interactive fire danger elements. And the KOMO News weather app is available to download for free. You'll have access to up-to-the-second weather conditions and forecasts right at your fingertips on your phone or tablet. Thank you for joining us, and stay safe this fire season. I'm Preston Phillips.